So the first live-action appearance of an Arquitens-Class light cruiser was in The Mandalorian, where we see Moff Gideon's command cruiser, but it's really different from other Arquitens-Class ships, so I figured today we would take a look at some of the differences between that ship and other Arquitens, and the lineage of that class of ship as a whole. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So the Arquitens-Class light cruiser played a crucial role in not just the Imperial Navy during the reign of the Empire, but in the Republic Navy during the Clone Wars and within the Imperial remnants following the Battle of Jakku. It was a crucial warship and arguably one of the most necessary warships within the Galactic Empire, even at times overshadowing the mighty Imperial-class Star Destroyer for its importance in very specific battles. Now, I've actually done an entire video breaking down the technical specifications of the Arquitens, so I'm not really going to go into depth on that. All you really need to know is it's a light cruiser designed to sort of supplement larger capital ships, more like an escort vessel than anything else. So before we talk about Moff Gideon's command cruiser, let's start at the beginning, when the Arquitens first appeared during the later days of the Clone Wars. Well, it was actually present in the beginning of the war, but really didn't see prominent usage until the very end of the conflict. During the later half of the war, it started to supplement the Consular-class cruisers and their wartime refits as a purpose-built military escort vessel for the Republic Navy. During that time, it was basically a smaller Venator minus the hangar. You see, during the Clone Wars, none of them had any fighter-carrying capacity at all. Well, we don't know that for sure, actually. There were several Arquitens-class light cruisers that in the very early days of the Empire had significant modifications that allowed them to have small hangar bays on board. This was not present in the standard Arquitens during the war, and really wasn't even present in the standard Arquitens during the Empire, but was around at around that time, so it's possible that in the later days of the war there were a few Arquitens-class light cruisers out there that had hangar bays on board. When the Empire replaced the Galactic Republic, they took over the Republic Navy, and the Arquitens found itself within the ranks of the Imperial Navy. And unlike its larger cousin, the Venator-class Star Destroyer, which was quickly replaced, the Arquitens stuck around, playing a crucial role in small Imperial fleets throughout the entire duration of the reign of the Galactic Empire. In fact, the Empire valued these vessels so much that about midpoint through the Empire's reign, they started major refits, completely redesigning the vessel to allow it to better fit Imperial roles. This included basically gutting it and rebuilding it from the inside out to be more Imperial in nature, serving things like the Tarkin Doctrine and carrying a larger contingent of soldiers. We actually see some exterior design changes in this refit as well, including a brace of superstructure constructed around the engines and more superstructure constructed around the pylons that lead to the engines. It's also noteworthy that there are actually a few variants of the Arquitens, or so it appears, within the Imperial Navy. First things first, we know that there's the standard Arquitens-Class light cruiser, as well as the Arquitens-Class command cruiser, which is just a name difference between the pre-refit version of the Arquitens and the post-refit version of the Arquitens. But we also know that there appears to be some minor variations in between different versions of the Arquitens, and some of these may be attributed to things like gameplay differences. For example, the Arquitens that we see in Squadron seems to be significantly more armed than the Arquitens-class cruisers we see in, say, Rebels. Still, regardless, the Arquitens played a crucial role in the Empire throughout the Galactic Civil War up to the end of the conflict when they started to thin out. You see, at some point during the conflict, one of the major Imperial shipyards was significantly damaged by New Republic attacks, and that left the production line for the Arquitens crippled, and instead of building an entire new construction facility for them, the Empire simply abandoned the project altogether. After all, they were dealing with a lot of other issues at the time. So, at that point, the number of Arquitens-class light cruisers became finite. With the end of the Galactic Civil War officially at the Battle of Jakku, and the beginning of this sort of Imperial Remnant era, the Arquitens wasn't done serving the Empire yet. A lot of Imperial Remnant factions had quite a few Arquitens under their command. Since a lot of them were stationed on backwater worlds in the Outer Rim, they were relatively abundant to the Imperial warlords that were operating in that area. So they were fairly common within sort of Imperial holdouts. But there are some notable, interesting exceptions here. The most notable one being Moff Gideon's Arquitens-Class cruiser, his sort of command ship. This is significantly modified compared to the original vessel. Not only does it appear to be quite a bit larger than a standard Arquitens, it has a massive hangar bay on board, including 2 separate entrances and a launch tube that launches out the middle, which is a fairly interesting feature. On top of that, it does seem to have a different engine array, allowing for additional auxiliary engines to back up the main engines on the vessel, and a likely increased armament. All of this coming together to make a vessel that looks a lot like an Arquitens, but almost isn't with the amount of modifications made to it. Still, Moff Gideon's Arquitens-Class light cruiser served as his flagship until it was taken over by a group of Mandalorians who used it for an attack on Mandalore, which ultimately saw the destruction of the vessel. It's likely the Arquitens-Class light cruiser would continue to crop up among Imperial remnants and likely even serve the First Order as scout ships, although by that point these vessels would have been remarkably old, and if the First Order weren't as desperate as they likely were during their early days, they probably wouldn't have taken such an elderly ship. The Arquitens-Class light cruiser is honestly one of my favorite ships from Star Wars. It fills a very interesting little niche, and mechanically it's fascinating. And if you'd like to learn more about the Arquitens from a mechanical standpoint and a ship design standpoint, I'll leave a link up here to my video breaking down the Arquitens-Class as a whole. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think it makes sense for this vessel to have been in service for 50 years. After all, it was first deployed during the Clone Wars and was in service probably all the way up to the rise of the First Order, so it had a long history. Do you think it's deserved, or do you think this vessel is a little bit overrated? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.